And we're live. Welcome back to the Loopcast. Today, we are joined by a special guest. We're joined by Erika, as always, but we're also joined by Jeremy Tate from the Classical Learning Test. Some of you may know his prolific Twitter activity or have taken his test maybe at this point. It's getting pretty widespread.
Yes.
Jeremy, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Pogo, Erika, love the Loop, love Catholic Vote, all the good work y'all do. Thrilled to be here.
Sweet, yeah. All the live chat, give Jeremy a warm welcome here. You're coming in from where, Jeremy?
So CLT is headquartered in Annapolis, Maryland, and we just got a new building, a 1780 building that we moved into about 2 months ago. So we set a big party date to kind of force ourselves to get the place ready, and we had that last Thursday night. So it's been great. We love our town. Have you been to Annapolis, Pogo, Erika?
I've never been to Annapolis,
beautiful.
no. But I want to roll the clip.
Go.
I want to roll the triumphant clip of you guys unveiling it if we can.
Oh, do that, please.
Here we go.
300 hours of work.
We're going to no volume, but Jeremy, run us through what's going through your head here. What's going on?
Yeah, so my dear friend, he got into stone carving, and he spent months and months carving classic learning tests in English, in Greek, in Latin, into marble. And then we set it in this beautiful mahogany wood. And we had about 200 people in Annapolis at the new headquarters for this kind of unveiling. That's Tim Feist, my best friend. And so I think this is kind of a 2.0 or 3.0 of the renewal movement of this recovery of things like stone carving, right?
Wow.
It's kind of this movement breaking into the physical world. And it was really cool. So every time I see it, it's... And he gave a great speech. He said, if a name is important, if a name was important in the ancient world, they put it into stone. And so it was just a great hug from a friend to put classic learning test into stone.
And just for people who aren't familiar, the classic learning test, what is it? What have you been working on?
Yeah, thanks, Pogo. So fundamentally, we're on an alternative to the College Board and to the SAT and the ACT, which may sound very boring, like who wants another standardized test? But the College Board is an absolute force in American education. They're in almost every high school, right? And they're aggressively secular. There was a lot of Twitter activity and news articles even on the College Board's AP Human Geography, where they had on their practice test, they were giving students a table, and all the table gave them was birth rates and death rates in a number of different countries. And then they said, which country based on the table has made the most advances in female empowerment? All they had was birth rates and death rates, right?
Oh my gosh, no.
And the correct answer was the country that had the most, had the lowest birth rate, which was France. And so they're equating female empowerment. And this is the most powerful force in American education. And if you don't, and think about the subtleness here, right? They want you to think they're just checking your ability to read a table, right? But no, they're checking for ideological conformity to this radical anti-natalist insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. We have a lot of, actually in this show particularly, we have some on that beat. But the first thing that I want to bring up, and shout out to everyone in the chat saying where they're from too. It looks like we have someone from Annapolis, which is cool.
Hey.
But we do this live Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Drop a like in the episode for everyone in here if you want to join us. It's more fun live, 11 a.m. Eastern time, so we can do that. But shout out to everyone listening to the podcast too. Reviews, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify helps out a ton. So if you could help us out there, that'd be great. That being said, Jeremy, we had our first cohort post-affirmative action admitted at MIT. Now, interesting for a lot of areas because you see the results of this, and of course, you get some ups and some downs. Up, Asian Americans up across the board, and then I believe we have drop in the black population and the Native American population. But I'd imagine when you talk about this ideological grip, one of the pillars of that basically is that affirmative action pillar, which has been just cut down by the Supreme Court. So curious on that post and then other posts, do you see any trends coming in higher education from your perspective?
Sure. Poga, I wanted to share with you my earliest memory of talking about affirmative action with anyone. And this was a conversation actually with my dad. My dad was a career ATF agent. He retired 15 or 20 years ago. And he said, the people I know who hate affirmative action the most are the very best black agents that we have. And he said the reason they hate it is because people will assume they got this job at ATF or FBI because of affirmative action, not because they were truly excellent, right? And that really, really stuck with me. And I wanted to just to put that out there before kind of offering a few comments on, what happened at MIT and just the situation at large.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Someone on Twitter reacted to the MIT table, saying, "At last, the first class in how many years where every student knows they earned their way there." And I thought, thinking of it from that point of view, is actually it's the better way. It's the more, it's the less racist way than just saying you can get. Whoa, there go the balloons on Pogo.
got balloons.
Those of you watching on video, Pogo just a bunch of rainbow balloons just went off.
It would not be a show without some random.
He liked what I
technology.
said, and so
It's a great point. It was a phenomenal.
I would do
Right.
balloons if I knew how. I can't. Figure
Yeah.
We'll see if you master the art of balloons by the end of the episode. Erika, you just dropped off, so the daughter just went away to Hillsdale. And
Yeah,
I
second
do
year.
have. I don't know if we can zoom in on me. I got my You Marry polo on for Josh.
Nice. Yes.
Josh
Right.
not
Yes.
here. You
Yep.
Marry. Shout out to the Marauders. They gave us
Yep.
free merch, so I
We
like
love them.
But they're
We
also
love
great
them.
outside of the free merch. But Erika, Hillsdale.
Yeah. So my daughter, our oldest, she just started her second year. She left yesterday, so I'm having little emotions right now. We talked about that Friday, I think. So we don't need my leather couch therapy. But we've appreciated Hillsdale College so much, getting to know it, and it's sort of a bellwether for when you drop it in conversation, how the rest of the conversation's going to go. You say, "Oh, my daughter goes to Hillsdale," and people either walk away awkwardly and say, "That's nice," or they get really excited. And but we've had a wonderful time working with them, not only in terms of her academics, but also just in terms of the whole philosophy behind the school there, which really is striving for excellence, for a grounding in true patriotism, the liberal arts, and challenging students to become leaders in the world. And it was funny, I was having a conversation with her last week sometime. They're starting to pack up, so you're having reflective meta conversations, and she asked me, she's like, Mom, you're in this space, like you're thinking about these sort of tough times in American history. It can feel kind of dark, and she's like, sometimes I feel like Hillsdale is such a drop in the bucket because there's hundreds of thousands of kids going to college campuses, and they're going places. Like, I was just looking at a story about Bowdoin College, and they have courses like Virginia Woolf as queer, Jane Austen as queer. I mean, it was 16 classes in the gender studies that were just ideological brainwashing. She said, I feel like we're such a drop in the bucket. What difference can a tiny school like Hillsdale make? And it was a good question. It shows that she's aware of what's going on in the world. But we just talked about how even having a very small percentage of the population be so well educated, grounded in truth, in liberal arts, in the conviction that there is objective truth, there is a human flourishing to which we can all aspire regardless of race, class, wherever we come from, that having even a small population that is trained as leader can make a huge difference in turning things around, or at least providing a foundation for a renewal. And I think, Jeremy, you referred to the word renewal, and that's truly what our country needs right now, not only in education, right?
Sure.
But in everything.
Yeah. And Eric, I mean, Hillsdale is 1,200 students, but I think it's having a cultural impact that's more than some universities with 40 or 50,000 students, right? And I got to share with you, the first time I heard of Hillsdale, I saw their brochure and it said, "What a college is meant to be." And I thought, that's kind of arrogant, what a college is meant to be. And now that I know Hillsdale so well, and by the way, 100% of our entire marketing department are all Hillsdale graduates, I'm like, yeah, it's what a college is meant to be. Like, what else would you say about it, right?
Is there a queer section of the CLT somewhere? Was that a part of the?
There is not.
Okay, good. Just had to make sure before we move on. So now that we're doing a little college talk, we get to the meat here. I think this has been on a lot of people's minds. So we have RFK Jr. dropped out of the race conveniently on Friday afternoon after our show, so we weren't able to comment on them. And not that this was a mind-blowing prophecy, but I did predict it. So I got to take the wins where it is. And so he drops out. He drops out of the race. He endorses Trump. And not only did he say kind of, oh, go hold your nose and vote for him in the 10 states or whatever that are swing, he actually showed up at the Arizona rally and campaigned actively for him and seems to be poised to for the next 75 days or so until the election. Sorry, that's the wrong video we got here. So interesting story on the background on this. Brian wrote a really interesting e-wire, and Brian, of course, has fingers in a lot of pies, let's put it that way. But this was going on kind of behind the scenes without a lot of people's knowledge. So apparently the RFK Jr. campaign reached out to him, and he didn't really know how to take it because he has such an interesting past, checkered past, as you will, and clearly not pro-life, at least publicly by all accounts. And so he took this meeting with him and said he was surprised at RFK jumping out as different to him. And when he means different, he says he seemed really curious. He seemed really open to the Catholic pro-life perspective. How do we move forward on this issue? And one thing that I think he really left away with was, and he actually started campaigning on, if we spend X amount of money on abortion, we need to be spending X amount of money on pro-life options, on other options, say pregnancy centers, because right now federal funding, of course, dominated by things like Planned Parenthood and the ability to end the life of a child. Instead, why don't we start funding initiatives that would encourage people to have children to help them out? And so a lot of this goodwill going on behind the scenes, and so he has his triumphant step down of the campaign and saying, in a lot of ways, it reorganized it philosophically to me as well. He was a former Democrat, obviously coming from a prominent Democrat family, American family, saying, this party is no longer the party of my father. That is a party of war, censorship, and I forget the final part. War, censorship, and something else. And he talked about how America has not become healthy. He wants America to become healthy again. And he feels that the only way to do this is through Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Bombshell to a lot of people. Is it going to move the needle? I'm not sure. Do you guys have general thoughts on this big announcement? Erika? Don't be shy.
I'll go first. Yeah. So I think that the difficulty we saw, the rage that we saw on conservative Twitter, even with RFK coming out and people saying, "Oh, this is a good thing," from the Catholic vote kind of world, was, well, as you said, Pogo, RFK is clearly not pro-life. I mean, he had an interview this past spring where we actually made him a 0 of the month because he was a cradle Catholic who comes out and says, yeah, there should be no limits on abortion. And so how can you look at someone like RFK and say, oh, I'm glad they're in my camp now, right? It's like, oh, well, just not him, anyone but him, And for me, I think obviously our goal as Catholics is that we build a culture in which abortion is unthinkable, that there are legal protections for all life, that culturally, when a woman gets pregnant unexpectedly or there are difficulties with the pregnancy, that there is not even a thought of abortion. It is the community coming together and saying, how can we support you to be the best mother you can be for this child? That's the goal, unequivocally. Where we are at right now in our political landscape, though, it's not even 2012. We are post-Dobbs, right? We are at a place where we can actually have a debate about abortion. And so what I want to look at is which political party is going to allow us to debate and to move our conviction forward, even if it's super baby steps, and which side is not. The Democrats they want to shut the debate back down. That is what Kamala Harris has said. They want.
Well, in his speech, she said that Democrats wouldn't even meet with him. Kamala Harris wouldn't even take his phone calls.
RFK was very clear. It's like, they won't even meet with me. And as far as, the party that's going to allow for us to continue to pursue a culture where abortion is unthinkable, I mean, the choice is pretty clear. And that's why when Donald Trump comes out and says things like he did last week, like, my administration will be great for women and their reproductive rights, which is the stupidest tweet ever. It was just stupid. It was dumb. And it was probably a concession of some kind to the Kennedy campaign saying, okay, we're going to come endorse you. What can you do? And he's like, oh, I'll send out this tweet. It's a stupid idea. Yeah. And Kennedy, we know that he is not there. His goal is not to have where abortion is unthinkable. That's not his goal. He doesn't share that goal with us. But the goal he does share with us is securing our border, protecting free speech, and preserving the constitutional order that Kamala Harris and the Democrats are eviscerating in real time. And they didn't even have a primary, right? Yeah. They're literally undoing democracy. And the thing that I was thinking about these more fundamental questions of survival for the constitutional republic, and I don't think enough Catholics realize that that's what time of day it is here. Like, we are in a battle for the survival of the conditions which would make it even possible to debate abortion policy. And I was thinking of an analogy. I don't know if this works, so I'm just going to say it out loud. And Jeremy, you can tear it apart if you want.
Let it rip.
But I just thought of this while I was nursing the baby about 20 minutes ago. So it might be really bad. But I was thinking about our founding fathers and the story of the ratification of the Constitution and how what they were striving for. You had people like James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, slaveholders, right? Arguing with people from the North. I think people from Rhode Island didn't even want to come to the table. They didn't even ratify it till like after Washington's inauguration. Because of these issues, they didn't even want to talk about creating an order with those people, right? Those slaveholders. And those who were able to reach across and say, we're going to at least work on what we agree on, which is creating a constitutional republic that will preserve the separation of powers so that there aren't these factions, these mob rule, basically, that we saw in other democracies. So their commitment to creating this republic was what allowed the conditions under which slavery eventually became unthinkable to flourish, right? Like, we wouldn't have gotten to 7 years ago from Abraham Lincoln if James Madison and Thomas Jefferson had gone one way and all the anti-slaveries had gone the other way. We wouldn't have even gotten to Abraham Lincoln. And then, of course, I think understanding that after the Emancipation Proclamation, after the end of slavery and the 14th Amendment, et cetera, we're still recovering from the wounds of slavery in many ways. And so, yeah, we're going to be recovering from the wounds of abortion for centuries. You can't kill 63 million people and not expect there to be national wounds, right? But if we're going to get to a place where children are protected from the moment of conception in law, in our Constitution, we're going to have to work with where we are now, with always making it clear that our ultimate goal is absolute cultural hegemony, meaning there is enshrined into the Constitution a right to life. So anyway, that's where I'm at with RFK and kind of responding to all this. But he's not one of us. Well, no, but at least he wants us to have the separation of powers. At least he preserves the filibuster,
All right, let's go on
Sorry,
to Jeremy.
that was a long rant.
No, Erika, that was great.
No,
I just wanted to give Jeremy an opportunity before I reveal that I'm a closet RFK guy and go into my crazy.
Yeah, and Erika, I love so much your language of, we're fighting for a culture where abortion becomes unthinkable. And I think this analogy of abortion to slavery is the only one that works. And but I also wanted to read this quote, and this came from Catholic Vote, came from The Loop. I get the email in my inbox almost every day, and it's like I open it every time. It's very good. And I read this, and I ended up tweeting it out. And so this is from an interview, maybe even with Brian, where RFK says, talking about his home. So this is the most prominent Democratic family in the 1960s, right? And this is how RFK and Ethel are raising, RFK Jr. and their 11 kids. We said the rosary at least once a day, oftentimes 3 times a day. We prayed before and after every meal. We read the Bible every night. We read the lives of the saints. We went to church. It was our whole family, and it was really our whole community. It was part of me growing up. So I have this question, and I've asked a number of thoughtful, well-educated Democrats this question. Where would RFK Jr. and RFK disagree? And I understand RFK has been dead since 1968. I think it was 68. So that's not an easy question. But this idea that RFK was just wonderful and RFK Jr. is this fringe crazy monster really highlights that the thing that's moved, I think, is the Democratic Party, right? How many Democratic politicians right now, leading Democrats, are raising their kids in the same way that Ethel and RFK raised JFK Jr. and their 11 children? Are there any in the Senate or in the House?
How many of them would have 11 kids?
That's right.
I mean, that's a question worth asking. I mean, I even saw there's a really interesting thread about, so we're simultaneously talking about abortion being a big problem and then a birth rate being a big problem. And it seems like a very simple solution to me. You know, like if we didn't abort all these people, we wouldn't have these issues. But someone did an interesting study about policy, and I almost want to say this because I do have other thoughts on RFK Jr. And I want to, because JD Vance, obviously that clip's out there.
Hey, we can circle back. Yeah.
I'll stop. I need to get this off my chest about RFK Jr. Many of you may have known that I've been a fan for a little while. And I've been a fan because I feel like he brings a different element, and I'm speaking probably on behalf of a lot of people who are independent as well. He speaks about different things than both major parties have. He speaks about them in a different manner. And I have noticed a genuine curiosity and investigation element to RFK Jr. Of course, people are bringing up things about his past. Yeah, not a perfect man. I mean, same thing with Trump, not a perfect man. And if you want to point fingers at the other side, not a perfect man as well. I personally, with politicians, a purity test doesn't appeal to me as much because most people in politics have skeletons. It's just the reality to me. But if I look at the issues that they're drumming here, number one, circle, war. Now, all of a sudden, Democrats have become this war hawk party that used to be attributed to Republicans, but they're beating the drum to go to war against Ukraine, to go to war for Israel with Americans. Now, I'm not willing for my children to go across the world to go die for other countries. That's my personal position. I'm maybe aging out close here for a draft. I mean, I'm married and have a kid, but that is just unconscionable to me what we're doing in Ukraine and in the Israel area. We're basically using Ukraine as cannon fodder against Russia to promulgate this proxy war. And I think we could have brought it to a peaceful resolution a long time ago. And this is a lot of Trump's argument, too. Like, a lot of this would not be going on right now if we had someone actually projecting power in the position for these fights. But RFK Jr., of course, not the party of war. I'm not in favor of forever wars. I'm not in favor of sending my children away for these wars. So I'm all for peaceful solutions. So is RFK Jr. Number two, censorship. Now, what has continually struck me about RFK Jr. was he was willing to go on every podcast, take every interview, talk to anyone. Sure, you got some crazy quotes of him out there about like the bear in the park and whatever. But I think if anything, that just speaks to the fact this dude will say whatever's on his mind at any time. And I think that type of authenticity speaks to me as a younger voter, especially because I get to look over,
right?
In a way,
Trumpian,
yeah. And I look over at the Harris campaign, who won't speak to anyone. Their campaign's complete Hollywood magic. I mean, it's like an Aaron Sorkin TV show right now. Seriously, it's unbelievable. But he was speaking to people at great personal cost a long time ago about the dangers posed by this cozy relationship between CDC, FDA, and big pharma companies. Now, he's talking about things that I see obviously happening with people my age. Chronic illnesses that no one can explain, obesity levels through the roof, people addicted to different like painkillers, antidepressants. I mean, the amount of things prescribed, birth control, the amount of things that so many people my age are on right now that never would have been the case when RFK Jr. was younger is the truth. I look around and see all this. I experience it. So for him to be one of the first politicians to speak to this about, hey, I want to make America healthy again. I do not want big pharma running people's lives, as they advertise. 70% of advertisements on TV are from big pharma companies. A lot of times they'll swap from boards. So like CDC people will go to, Eli Lilly or whatever. Like, I see all of this and it's affecting me and my children. I don't know if this just doesn't matter as much to Republicans and Democrats. They feel like they can't win on these kind of issues, but it speaks to me a lot personally. So I'm happy he brings it up. And then in terms of corruption, I mean, we see such obvious corruption and collusion between a lot of these big conglomerates in terms of the military industrial complex and big pharma as well. And the more that I speak, I realize I'm probably sounding like a conspiracy theorist, and maybe I am. But to hear him bring all that together in one speech and to say, this is being pushed by one side right now. One side is clearly the institution, the incumbent, even if they're trying their best to make it sound like Kamala Harris wasn't the vice president the last 3 years. And then we have someone that makes everyone so angry. He's an outsider, and people are terrified of him getting back in office. It just speaks to me as this kind of philosophical realignment of the options right now. Like, you have the option of the resistance, and then you have the option of the institution.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you see the criticism of his speech where because in the speech he kind of in the rally speech he kind of offhandedly said the FDA is funded 50% by big pharma, and the FDA actually came out with an official statement saying this is a misleading number. We are only 47% funded by big pharma corporations. They literally thought that this was somehow comforting to the American people. I'm like,
not me, brother.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Just the lack of self-awareness there.
And then some guy from the board of Pfizer just was on Face the Nation and said, yeah, you guys all need to get COVID shots again. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I wonder, there's no connection to an incentive here.
I'm like,
must
no.
be. Yeah, so there's all that. And gosh, something else I was going to say on that point. But basically, that's why for people confused, like, who does RFK Jr. speak to? It's like, it's people like me. And so now the big question I feel like is, okay, if he drops out and supports Trump, does that just mean people are going to drop out and not vote? Or are they going to switch over to the Trump camp? And I don't know the answer to that for sure, but, Josh did promise to give us rants, and he delivered. So shout out to everyone who's missing Josh. He did deliver a rant on RFK Jr. on the practical effects. Josh, can we run the Josh rant here?
Here in Lake Country, Minnesota, and let me tell you something. RFK dropping out may not seem like a game changer to some people, but the fact is, Donald Trump lost 3 states in 2020 by such close margins. I'm talking Arizona, Wisconsin, Georgia, by just razor-thin margins. And he was trailing Biden by 6-7 points in the polls, and came that close and nearly won again. He's not that far behind Kamala. And RFK giving him a boost like that, I think this really could be, I do think it could be a game changer. So I always thought RFK was going to fizzle out at the end. Thus speaks the Oracle.
Like a boss.
Thus speaks the Oracle. Indeed.
All right. He says it's a game changer.
And this is a great opportunity for us to be able to talk trash about Josh and him not be able to do anything. So I'll keep that in the back pocket. But sorry, Jeremy, was there anything there on RFK Jr. before?
Yeah, I think you see just tremendous courage. I mean, what happens if you stand up to big pharma in the U.S. is you're going to be called the conspiracy theorist. I mean, it is their little worker bees. They're going to make sure that your Wikipedia page, says that. Why? You stand up to the idea that we shouldn't have to get injected by new and untested products, and that makes you a fringe conspiracy theorist. So, and RFK has known that in picking this battle, and I think just tremendous fortitude is being demonstrated there.
Yeah, and we have people in the chat calling it disappointing, Josh. Not a lot of ranting in that rant. I agree. A little bit low energy. Not to be too nitpicky. We need a little more energy.
But...
That's true. He's on vacation. Maybe he's a little more zen, but it was a little underwhelming. True rants are not staged. That's true. That's why we have him on the show 3 times a week, and he can't stay away. So I appreciate the chat's giving him a hard time, and he needs that. He needs a little fire under the pants. Then we'll get a better rant next time. But yeah, tremendous courage, and I think it's also interesting. Like, he was completely ostracized from polite society for 25, 30 years, and this was someone who's like brushing elbows with all the most famous people at all the most famous parties, and we're talking about a guy who sacrificed a lot to follow his true convictions. He used to be like an environmental attorney. I mean, I think still is, and he used to be really popular because, of course, that's kind of fashionable at the time. And he's like, why is the vaccine schedule quadrupled? And then people are like, let's get him off the talk shows. Like, we can't.
Right.
I don't know about all that. But
not only by like polite society, but his own family has been. I mean, very publicly, they came out on Saturday with this horrible statement about, he's betrayed his family, betrayed his father and his grandfather and uncle, and it was just such an exercise in uncivil discourse. I was like, guys, you could just not say anything. Like, it's your family and your brother, and so he's also really suffered, just like you said, Jeremy, just for being curious about, gosh, I wonder why this is this way. And again, kind of like Trump's journey, because I was watching like this old Oprah Winfrey like clip where Trump went on in like the 90s, and she was just fawning over him and like Trump this, Trump that, and like, this is awesome. Like, he went on Saturday Night Live and he was just so cool as the Apprentice dude, and then all of a sudden he comes down the escalator and it is like blacklisted. He's horrible. So Yeah, we know what happens. And I think that touches to, you'd mentioned the censorship issue, Pogo. That's huge for me because we know, like after the Twitter files, and we know just watching the Democratic National Convention, that were the Democrats to keep control of the White House, they would also be in control of the media and the information flow. So that would essentially, like, you cannot have a free society where the state controls the media. We know what that's called. That's called Pravda. And that we've seen that before. That is a hallmark of the totalitarian regime. And so to me, it's really healthy to go with the Trump Kennedy angle, because you know that if they take control of the White House, the press will not be in charge and they will be at odds with the government, which is actually safer for the little guy like me to have the government and the media be at loggerheads. So I'm just for that reason alone.
Well, on that
clearly.
point, the part of his speech that really stuck out was that he was saying he was running for president to be on the Democrat ticket, and he was blackballed by the establishment from being on any Democrat media. So we're talking CNN, CSNBC, MSNBC, and it's hard to even put in perspective how dishonest a lot of this has been. I mean, Gavin Newsom's on podcast joking about how it was a very bottom-up process of selecting Kamala Harris. I mean, she was just placed at the top, and then you get all the apparatus saying they hate RFK Jr. because of all the things that he represents. So it's like, well, we're going to blackball him from speaking to the people through the media. And then you wonder, like, why does he get so popular for going on the Joe Rogan Experience or going on other podcasts? Like, that's become the new medium to actually reach people. And that's how you build an organic grassroots audience. And so we kind of have this like Hollywood media elite versus podcast presidents right now. And I guess we'll see what actually works. I don't know. It's going to be close. No question. Josh said it. It's going to come down to a few percent. So I think in terms of practical, like, it definitely didn't hurt bringing him on board. If anything, it could move the needle slightly enough to just win, because it's going to be very close. That's what all the projections are saying right now. But on the abortion topic, and there's a clip that came out over the weekend that I think summarizes this well, and I want to get deeper into being pro-life, being Catholic, and being in politics right now. So can we play that J.D. Vance clip?
Issue that was talked about at the Democratic National Convention. It's being talked about on the campaign trail. Abortion. Sure. Democrats made the case this week and beyond this week that Donald Trump, if elected, will impose a federal ban on abortion if he wins. Now, Donald Trump says he won't, but can you commit, Senator, sitting right here with me today, that if you and Donald Trump are elected, that you will not impose a federal ban on abortion?
I can absolutely commit that, Kristen, and Donald Trump has been as clear about that as possible. I think it's important to step back and say, what has Donald Trump actually said on the abortion question, and how is it different from what Kamala Harris and the Democrats have said? Donald Trump wants to end this culture war over this particular topic. If California wants to have a different abortion policy from Ohio, then Ohio has to respect California and California has to respect Ohio. Donald Trump's view is that we want the individual states and their individual cultures and their unique political sensibilities to make these decisions, because we don't want to have a nonstop federal conflict over this issue. The federal government ought to be focused on getting food prices down, getting housing prices down, issues, of course, where Kamala Harris has been a total disaster. So I think Donald Trump is right. We want the federal government to focus on these big economic and immigration questions. Let the states figure out their own abortion policy.
Let me just follow up with you a little bit on that point, because I've been talking to Republicans, including Senator Lindsey Graham just last week, who've made it very clear that if Donald Trump is elected, if you are elected, they will continue to press this point. Senator Graham said to me, I'm going to keep saying that there should be a federal ban. If such a piece of legislation landed on Donald Trump's desk, would he veto it?
Well, I think it'd be very clear he would not support it. I mean, he said that explicitly. Yeah, I mean, if you're not supporting it as the President of the United States, you fundamentally have to veto it.
So he would veto a federal abortion ban?
I think he would. He said that explicitly that he would. And
I don't
again,
think he's ever said explicitly he would. He said that to you?
Lindsey Graham, Kristen, I would be surprised. I mean, again, I need to see the context on what Lindsey Graham said, because Lindsey Graham himself has not advocated a federal abortion ban. Lindsey Graham has advocated a federal minimum standard. Now, to be clear, that is not Donald Trump's view. Donald Trump disagrees with Lindsey Graham on this, but no Republican, at least no Republican with any reasonable power, is saying that we should have a complete national abortion ban. I haven't heard that from any of my colleagues. And to be clear, Donald Trump, I think, has staked his position and made it very explicit. He wants this to be a state decision. States are going to make this determination themselves.
All right.
Jeremy, I'm going to go to.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the option to go first. There's a lot here.
No, I think Jeremy
Yeah.
should go first because I'll
This
just
is a
Well, I'm going to
issue.
be short. I'm going to be short.
Go for it.
You know, I love JD Vance. Loved Hillbilly Elegy. I loved his story. I mean, JD is, you know, in a lot of the Catholic circles where I've got dear friends, you know, folks like Jen Frey and others. It's sad, and I get what's going on here, right? I mean, this is kind of the race for the moderate middle, and as they would say in politics and whatnot. But I do feel like there's. I'm not happy with it. I do feel like there's a kind of a lack in some ways of courage on display with this. And look, as Catholics, we believe the law is pedagogical, right? We believe that the law is teacher, and that our sensibilities about what is right and what is wrong is shaped by the law itself, right? And I think that's something that's been left out of this conversation entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Erika?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with what Jeremy said. I think where my first reaction to this is JD Vance comes out and says, "I can guarantee that," and yes, I wish his response had been a refusal to engage her mendacious question, right?
Yes.
Because he does get to it eventually in his response, and you hear him say that no one is talking about a ban on abortion from the Republican side. And to our shame, that is true, right? No one is talking about this. But the Democrat Party Pravda machine, the media, they have convinced the vast majority of Americans that if Donald Trump is elected, we will see a no-holds-barred total ban on all abortions, including mifepristone, including, embryo discarding with IVF. They've convinced them of this, and it's simply not true. So I think it was smart of JD Vance to bring that up. She obviously didn't hear him, or she just repeated her thing that no, the ban on abortion, when really all we're talking about is this sort of flimsy 15-week, let's randomly pick a date when the baby's worthy of life, right? Kind of like the black person is a 2/3 of a person under the Constitution randomly, right? To just justify slavery. So again, no one's talking about that. And there is a 0% chance that Congress will even consider this legislation a total ban on abortion. So it's
0.0000000.
0.00. So JD Vance,
no percent.
JD Vance without it, yes, it's definitely like trying to toe the line without himself personally like betraying his convictions as a Catholic. He's saying, I can guarantee there will be no signing of a ban because there won't be one, right?
Yeah.
But with the listeners don't hear that, right? And that's where I think the lost opportunity is. And I wish what he'd said is, that question has no meaning because that will never even happen under the current conditions. Here's what we are doing to build a culture of life, though. I want to talk to you about, child tax credits. I want to talk to you about, school choice. I want to talk to you about the ways Donald Trump and myself want to proactively start to move the cultural needle towards the direction of life. I wish he had not engaged the question.
That plays very well to the vast majority of Americans, right? I think that language of, even conception to natural birth, not just, child tax credits and that kind of thing. Erika, I love Kevin's comment. I'm just curious, is there a national ban on murder, or is that just left to state laws? Kevin, thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, and I think they have a point. One thing that I just keep coming back to, though, and this is as someone who is bulletproof, pro-life, Catholic, I have no exceptions to that in any case. And I understand that's an extreme position for America, soberly. I'm not happy that that's the case, but it is the case. I mean, I was even going through some polling, and this is for this upcoming election. I have women who are abortion voters are younger, more likely to be Democrats and say abortion should be legal. So if I look at younger versus total, if I'm looking at total of the demographic of profile of women voters who say abortion is the most important issue to their vote compared to women voters overall, total women voters, we have 68% of white women say it is the most important part. Now, that's not to say there aren't some saying that's on the other end of the issue, saying that they're pro-life, and that means therefore this is a part of their vote. But if you look at young white women, we're talking 72% of young white women, 47% of Democrats, 60% of Democrats for young white women. So the reality is, and this is the same thing with the gotcha on the IVF and whatever, and like you can name your Catholic doctrine thing that it's against. It'd be so easy to be across the chair interviewing him and wanting to get him right, because I'm thinking she's 2 for 2 now and getting him on gotcha questions.
Yeah.
I could just, okay, we got balloons again. This was a great point.
Wow. Okay. Good job, Tom.
Sorry, for audio listeners, this must be so confusing. They're probably like, yeah, in the studio, balloons just get unleashed whenever he makes a good point. That'd be kind of cool. Maybe we should look into that. But no, it's digital. I don't know what's going on. My point is, she could sit across there and be like, so, like, would you, if a law came to your desk or came to Trump's desk that would overturn gay marriage, would you sign it? Would he sign it? If a law came to your desk on IVF, would you sign it? If a law came to your desk on name Catholic position that is extreme to the general public, would you sign it? It's so easy, right? And it's like, it's so facetious because that's not reality. As Erika said, reality right now, American people as a whole are not ready to ban IVF. They're not ready to ban contraception. They're not ready for ban, period, for a lot of things in general, not just to this. So when I'm thinking like to be smart politically as a Catholic, I'm trying to move the football, as always. I don't want to get caught in these gotchas and the false dichotomy. I feel like there's this dichotomy forming on social media, and maybe this is just social media how it works, but you either have to be in favor of a full ban, full stop on abortion everywhere, or you are in the other camp where you allow it at any point in 9 months. The most extreme case is partial birth, right? Like that's what the conversation is right now. You're either in one of two camps. That's how it feels, at least. And for me, we need to get the country to a place where it's ready to start moving the football in a reasonable direction. I would love to see us get closer to a European model, because in Europe, they're much less extreme than America. Right now in Europe, I believe a lot of the bans are in like 15, 20. But even the language of bans is politically toxic to most of the country. And if we get toxic to the point where, all right, guess I'm not going to vote, I'm going to throw it to the other side. I mean, there were abortion bans at the DNC. What do you think the other side's going to come out here? And of course, that's not a good argument to vote for someone. But if you look at a candidate like Donald Trump, he personally is not pro-life by all accounts, right? And I think we hope for that. He spoke at the March for Life, which is awesome. He's been very friendly to the pro-life argument. Much better than can be said for the other side. But he's very transactional, and he's a businessman. And so he's going to look for the middle point in which we can meet, make the best deal possible, and move the ball forward. And I think being on the side that's trying to negotiate and work towards more of a pro-life society politically, that's where I want to be. That's not perfect. I'm not, satisfied with that. But something that really made me think about this differently too is I think about, we have a birth rate problem in America. Everyone keeps saying it. It's just the reality right now. And so this guy wrote this really interesting thread. I'm going to give him credit to Johan Kurtz. He talked about how South Korea spent $200 billion trying to increase its birth rate, and Hungary currently spends 5% of its GDP. Both are currently failing to increase the birth rate in their countries.
Right.
And he offers the example of Georgia, the country of Georgia, how its birth rate massively spiked without spending a dollar. So I think that it potentially speaks to the fact that fertility is not about money. It may not even be about policy, government policy. It's about status. This is his argument. So if I go through this thread, super interesting. He's talking about the common explanations for why fertility is collapsing cannot be the whole story. As the above countries and Nordics show, giving people economic benefits to have children does not move the needle. And the examples he has is France, the US, UK, Finland, Spain, Korea, all have increased their average spending, and their birth rates have all decreased. You can see in the red lines here in the graph. And then you also see religiosity, not a good answer for this. Even if you isolate the most religious population, weekly church attenders, within the most religious of the major Western countries, the USA, you find barely break-even fertility rates. We'll look at Amish and the Jews shortly. So you have the last decade has been a substantial increase in the share of millennials who own homes. So home ownership is not the answer, as we've seen our birth rate go down here in the U.S. And collapse of fertility rates in the Western world, which started over a century ago, long precedes the advent of oral contraceptive pills, as well as endocrine disruptors and other relevant chemical agents which may be interfering with fertility health, as you see in this graph. That's not the answer. So, paradox, a stable trend which continues to unfold across the West in country after country, generation after generation, without an obvious causal logic. How is this to be explained? So, his argument is that social status denotes a universal set of human instincts and behaviors. Status describes the perceived standing of the individual within the group. It denotes their social value and their place within the formal and informal hierarchies which comprise a society. And so he gives this example of Georgia, which I thought was super interesting. The patriarch of the popular Georgian Orthodox Church, Ilya II, announced that he would personally baptize and become godfather to all third children onwards. And so, sorry, if you scroll up to the graph above, in the mid-2000s, Georgia spiked its birth rate. It went from 50,000 to 64,000 over the course of 2 years, a 28% increase, which it has sustained now for many years. And all corresponding with this patriarch basically saying, yeah, I'll be the godfather and I'll baptize them.
So what you're saying is Cardinal Dolan should just like come out and say he's going to be the godfather for all third Catholic children born.
I don't know if that'll work because I don't think Catholics are largely the problem. And then, yeah, he gave the inverse of South Korea because South Korea has basically this system. I forget the name they have of it, but they work for these companies that they call, I'm going to look for the chaebol system. And the chaebol system in Korea is basically they have all these tests, CLT, there you go. They have rigorous tests that they spend a lot of money to prepare for. It can determine where you get set up in college, and then which college you go to determines where you get set up in your job. And this chaebol company, including Samsung, can determine basically your social status in society, let alone making a lot of money, but whether or not you're respected, whether people associate with you. And so because there's so much stress on this, people choose to have less children because they spend a lot of money to get people in these companies.
Right, or delay fertility so long that then the woman's only able to have one or two, maybe, usually
right.
one.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that poses the question, like, I almost, I don't know if I admire, because I'm super pro-life, of course, but like, obviously the language of total bans has not worked. Politically. It hasn't. There's been no success on that front at all. I mean, Roe v. Wade was overturned through Supreme Court judges, which is awesome. But the language of pro-life bans have not worked if you look at state by state. Didn't work in Ohio. It's not working. It didn't work in Michigan. So to think creatively on this issue in terms of politics, I think is smart because clearly what's happening now is not working. But then also working on a more local grassroots level for solutions to create a pro-life society, I think would probably be a better use of time and energy. Just from casual observation.
Yeah, I think my one hesitation there, I mean, I agree. We have to change the culture so that we need to preserve our constitutional order and work to change the culture like Jeremy's doing with education so that we can work towards a culture where abortion's unthinkable. We have protections in law and in our society, in our secondary institutions it's just a gimme that you're pregnant, we're going to help you raise this child. My only hesitation right now with the J.D. Vance and just being like, yeah, he did a great job, other than I wish he hadn't answered the question, like he just rejected the premise entirely, is that as a Catholic, we are bound to make clear what our ultimate goal is. And I do worry that the more he succumbs to these gotcha moments, the less clear it becomes that he ultimately too shares that goal of unthinkable. Abortion is unthinkable. And I know that in the past he has said pro-life statements. He's always voted pro-life. His record is like 100% on the pro-life issue in the Senate. And I would just say that, as we progress in this campaign, and he has tied himself to a campaign where we know the president is transactional on abortion, we're seeing guys like Kennedy come on board who have said they don't support any restrictions on abortion publicly, and he hasn't walked that back, that J.D. Vance continue as a man of fortitude and perseverance to state, yeah, I'm working with these people. I myself have this goal. My goals are different from the Trump goals, but we're working together because that's the only way we are going to undo 50 years of what the law Roe, to Jeremy's point, what Roe taught the American people, which is women can't succeed without abortion. The society can't succeed without abortion, it is so devastating to hear that stat that 72% of young white women, abortion's their number one issue. I'd like to see a breakdown of how many of them it's the pro-life side, I'm going to guess it's less than 2%. I'm going with 70% of young white women want full access to abortion at any point that if they should desire it. And that's devastating because that is a huge percentage of my daughter's generation are convinced that the only way they can have a good life is to be able to kill their unborn children, reject motherhood, full access to birth, basically to just turn themselves into men fertility-wise, right? That they can just walk away from pregnancy, and that is so tragic and sad. And that's
you had
what
that
has
great
to
quote.
change.
You had the great quote about the drop in the bucket from your daughter. That was actually a really poignant thought, and I think it applies in this instance as well in many instances. And that's why, like, when we have this conversation, I think it's good to acknowledge that yes, where we are right now is extreme for the public. However, there are very practical things that you can do in your community in your everyday life to continue build that culture of life instead of to just fall into despair and say, well, what's the point? You know, what are we doing here? And I see that every day. I mean, I was seeing that at Mass on Sunday. I see that with my friends. I mean, these are people that are committed to raising the next generation, to having children, to welcoming them with open arms and building communities in which fatherhood and motherhood is celebrated and that you can be supported in that. I see that. I feel that. So I'm actually very encouraged on a micro level in my experience. I'd say don't fall into despair on that.
Yeah, and besides just having your own family and raising your own children the right way, I mean, we're seeing this. We covered the story a couple weeks ago where the number of maternity homes for single mothers who are in danger and their unborn children are in danger or they're being pressured to abort, the number of maternity homes since Dobbs dropped has increased like 147% in the United States. That is huge. That is so hopeful. And what I hope a Trump administration would do would preserve our right to build more homes like that and to open more pregnancy centers. Whereas Kamala Harris presidency, they've already pledged that they're going to shut down maternity pregnancy resource centers. I mean, she tried to do it in California. They have to like put all of these disclaimers all over their website that we're not a medical facility and here's where you can get an abortion. And I mean, the strangulation of efforts like that to build a culture of life under Harris, it's undeniable that that's what we would see more of.
Hey,
You know, I think of this in so many ways as not just kind of the issue or one of the main issues, but as kind of the gauge, the thermometer, you know, for every other issue and checking the temperature. I mean, what does it say about the country as a whole? You know, if 70% of young white women, you know, this is the top issue. And Erika, as you said, you know, probably afraid that they wouldn't have access to abortion, right? What does that say about the kind of young men, right, that are available, you know, for young women, you know, to marry? And so it is a reflection. It's the thermometer. It's the gauge of the health, you know, of the nation as a whole. You know, and I think when we change the culture, you know, hopefully policies will follow.
Yeah, Jeremy, it's funny. Sometimes I think of you as you almost have your own school or your own method or something. I know you have the test, but of course, classical education is much broader than that. And I think so much of these young white women who they're preached from the beginning, hey, your ultimate goal is to take these AP classes, to get the best possible ACT score, to then go to the best college possible, and then go get the best job possible. And all along the way, they're told, you know, oh, if you're not achieving these high goals or you have something come in the way of that, say unexpected pregnancy or the desire to maybe settle down and have a family, you need abortion to reach that full potential. Mm-hmm. Is there a difference that you've seen in terms of approach to education that we're talking about creating that culture of life? Like, do you feel like that culture of life is kind of ingrained in that classical method towards education?
You know, absolutely. And I'm sure, Erika, have you talked about Catherine Pakaluk's book, Hannah's Children, on the podcast?
I interviewed her. Drop that on the Edified podcast. Everyone can head over there next and watch that awesome interview.
Please do. And I was at Knapp Institute with Catherine and she spoke and I got the book there and I read it on the flight home, and such a powerful, you know, testimony to it. In the way she sets this book up, of course, is not why aren't women having babies? Why are we down to 1.6 women, you know, birth per woman? Instead, why are some women, Erika, like yourself, choosing to do this really wild thing now, at least in the current context of having, you know, 5 or more children? And what, to me, the common theme, you know, she interviews 55 of these women, and this common theme is education, and for so many of them, right? And that an education that fosters a love of God and neighbor and family, and these go together, you're more likely to have and to be open to life, to have large families. So absolutely, I think, and this is really what I see as a fundamental difference, Pogo, between classical education and this whole movement and mainstream ed. And you can even see this going into these schools. You ask a kid at a typical public school, why are we here? What's the point? They're typically going to say to get a better job, right? And you do this at a lot of classical schools, and some may say that, but a lot of classical schools are going to say something like, to grow in wisdom, to grow in virtue, right? When that's the aim of education, everything is different. I mean, if the goal of education is to grow in virtue, to grow in the capacity for love, for generosity, right? Of course, that's going to extend to how we understand the blessing of children.
Wow.
I love it.
I almost love that. I heard you say that, and I feel like if one of my boys said that when I was in public school, I would have kind of punched them in the arm because oh, you're kind of being a jerk, you don't mean that or whatever. But I know for and I've been around the circles, I know that's legitimate and sincere, but it's almost so different. That is strikingly different than an answer I would hear at 90% of schools in the country. And I know that movement's growing, and I can see why. Because it feels like it's a little bit more worthwhile than, because the unfortunate end of the story, not to be a spoiler, if you go down the get the best job possible track, you're going to get that best job and you're going to feel a little miserable.
But Pogo, I think that too is going to change, and I was telling Eric a minute ago, again, 100% of our entire marketing at CLT they're Hillsdale graduates. We hire big from Patrick Henry College, where there are 95% homeschool kids going to Patrick Henry College. I mean, fundamentally, and this is the great irony, right, is that classical education not aimed at college and career readiness, right, but they make amazing employees. They're aimed at being more fully human. They're aimed at being virtuous. Do you know what every company needs is more virtuous young people, right?
Yes.
Amen to that. Yeah. No, that's 100% been my experience as well. And I see the argument, and it's almost shocking to people when Thomas Aquinas College over in California, they all have, I can't remember the exact name of the degree. If we have any TAC people in the chat, let me know. But they all have the same degree. There's no specialized. You go there. And Jeremy, do you know what I'm talking about? I'm sorry, I don't want to speak over you.
But yeah, TAC, St. John's, even in Annapolis, no majors, great books.
School.
Yeah,
great books, and then they all get the same education, but then they all go on to be super impressive. A lot of them going to law school, a lot of them going to these pretty impressive jobs, and people are kind of it almost is so different than how our brains have been structured to expect college. They're like, oh, you get this major, right? You're doing business, you're going to go to the business school, you're going to do this. I mean, I had a major personally, but it's different, but it's different for a reason. And then I feel like a lot of people go to college and then they take a lot of classes that they feel were worthless or not worthwhile. All my education was online and I just had to fill out a few Canva things, and then I get a piece of paper saying that I know statistics or whatever. But I don't know. I don't want to. We're running out of time here. I need to do an entire episode on classical education.
I know, could we just do a
and
whole
the Socratic method and everything like that. But every time where I've brushed with that, I have always felt better about what I'm doing. I feel smarter. I feel like I really engage with something meaningful. And I've done both. I've done both classical education and public education. So I know both probably more than most people. But Jeremy, thank you for what you're doing, dude.
Thank you.
I believe in it personally, so I'm really happy to see you guys just blow up. Okay, so moving on to the Twilight Zone now, and Jeremy, I'm sorry, this is, if you have one, I'll explain the premise. Do you have one prepared before I explain the premise?
I think it's is it the book we're doing or just something random, interesting?
Yeah.
So a moment during the week where you encountered something and you felt like you were in the Twilight Zone is my base description. If that could be a personal story, that could be something you saw in the news, that could be a trend you're seeing. So I'll give you some time. Erika and I can go, and then if you have one to round us out, that's just off the top of your head.
All right, I'll close this out.
For it.
Y'all
okay,
go first.
sick.
Yeah.
Erika, you're first.
All right, since we didn't get to this in the show, I did want to just take a moment. So today is the anniversary of our withdrawal from Afghanistan, and it is the day that 13 of our American soldiers gave their lives during that disastrous time. And this was pretty wholesome to me. I don't know if you can click on that, Jessica. We got Greg Price there. Yeah, the third. It's only been 3 years. Gosh, man, that was. It's been a long 3 years under Biden, people. So if you
Seriously.
scroll down there, I just wanted to show this is, President Biden's at the beach out in California. Kamala is still MIA, probably giving a speech off a teleprompter. And then President Trump actually shows up at Arlington and lays the wreath. And people are going to look at this and say, oh, it's a campaign gimmick and he's just like showing off. But I think that there's probably an element of that, but also just genuinely remembering our dead, remembering our fallen who died in the line of fire. And yeah, he chose the right thing today. So this was the right thing to do on a day like today. And the fact that our sitting president is not at Arlington, the fact that his running mate is not there, it just speaks to the division and just the not caring that's going on there. So
Yeah, pray
kudos
for
to
the
Trump. Kudos
pray for
to
the
Trump.
repose.
Pray for the repose
of the 13. I mean, was it 13 or 16?
It was 13 that
13?
day, today. Yeah.
And he's not the president right now, and he's doing this.
Right.
How embarrassing! This is so embarrassing to me. And the fact that they
Really,
even
like,
let Trump in, and there's like people with him there, like they clearly are co-signing what's going on. They must not expect Biden to do this. I mean, he's literally the president of the United States. This is so embarrassing.
Yeah. Yeah. Every former president and every president should be there right now. But
And and the media is attacking him on the suckers and losers line too, and it's like that's why all the media stuff is all
which
fun
has
and
been
games.
debunked.
Right,
Yes.
which has of course been debunked, but that's so how shameless they are about all this. Like you're seeing this right now, and I'll never forget watching people run after that plane leave Afghanistan is one of the most profoundly embarrassed and sad moments I've ever felt as an American, to just leave people. And that's only our 13 service members that died. We're not even talking about all the informants that were probably slaughtered directly after that. We're not talking about all our equipment being used probably to cause death and destruction in the region. They're all dancing around, like parading our stuff. It was just the whole thing was like, I at a point during the debate, and it came up in the debate, like this is probably one of the strongest points Trump has. It just it makes me so unbelievably angry. I remember seeing at a baseball game too, even at our local, like it was a kind of not even minor league affiliate. They had like 13 flags out on chairs directly after that, and we all had a moment of silence. And I just could not think, like, as a president, allowing that to happen is just unconscionable to me.
Yep. Twilight Zone.
Ugh. Okay, mine's
Sorry,
kind of
that
fun.
was a downer. Yeah,
No,
thank you.
mine's
Bring
kinda
us
fun.
up, Pogo, please.
I'm going to bring us up, and I have in big, bold red letters here that I need to boost our CAP report on immigration, Erika. So the Catholic Accountability Project, we have a new report on immigration.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. So Catholic Accountability Project, which brought you such wonderful podcasts like The Church and COVID and other bombshell, we exposed Joe Biden. We've had great ones. It's been awesome. This one's one of the best, I have to say. We're talking about Catholic social teaching and the border. And our Ben Mann, who is our wonderful investigative journalist, he spent months on this, going through the teachings of the church on the border. I think Catholics get a lot of like guilt tripping, right? Because, we want to welcome the stranger and we just got to like help poor. But he really goes through and meticulously breaks down the actual policies of the Biden-Harris administration and demonstrates how they are anything but welcoming and anything but loving. And I love this report because it's not just about like, oh my gosh, we're having an invasion of our country, which is horrible, and the bad things are happening to Americans because of this, but also explaining how it is damaging to the countries from which these immigrants are coming. It's damaging to the immigrants themselves, of course, most importantly to the children and the women who are being exploited at our border. So he really takes this universal Catholic writ large stance on it. So everyone needs to go over. It's available in the Loop. We're releasing it one part every day this week. So make sure you're checking the Loop. Make sure you're subscribed to the Loop. If you're not, what are you doing? Get subscribed and check out the CAP report. It's called Bad Samaritans.
Erika, you're so good at this. Thank you for that.
I love a little commercial.
First part of the Twilight Zone, someone responded about the Friday show, which was insane. But what they did respond with made me happy. So we have, this is from Laura. Shout out to Laura for emailing in. I've been listening to Loopcast for over a year, and while I often think about writing in, I usually listen while I'm exercising / working in the yard. I figured I finally had to write in to stand with Erika. I also think about World War II multiple times a day.
Yes!
Never thought about it before, but all the things Erika said are true, at least for me. And while I'm not as well educated as Erika, I have homeschooled / graduated 4 of our 7 kids so far. So I have
that's pretty
repeated
good.
all the various grade levels for the past 21 years, and I love history. Excellent show. Thanks for what you do. Shout out to Laura for standing with Erika.
Thank you, Laura. I'm with her.
I still think that's insane to think about World War II multiple times a day. But Jeremy, do you think
It's
about
true.
World War II multiple times a day? You,
I do not multiple times a day, but I do think about it quite a bit.
do you have what's your version of the Roman Empire? Did you hear that went around as like men think about the Roman
How
Empire
often do you
once
think
a
about the
day?
Roman Empire?
Like, do you have a niche period of history that you think about often?
Well, so my Twilight Zone is what I do daydream about a lot.
Ooh.
And it's so Sagrada Familia is going to be complete after 140 years of construction. In 2 years, they'll finish the Christ the King Tower. It'll be the tallest church on earth when it's complete. And it's something in the story of it has just completely captured my imagination. I think it's not only otherworldly beautiful. This is Spanish architect Antoni Gaudi, who really set out to tell the
beautiful.
story of all of Christianity and the entire Bible through this. It's in some ways it's a giant sculptor, in and of itself, and so it'll be this great gift to the world. And in so many ways, it's such a powerful providential story. It should never have been completed. It was intentionally targeted, and all of the models to create this were blown up in the Spanish Civil War. And the architects actually had to get the pieces of these models that were broken into hundreds and hundreds of pieces and try to put those back together again to figure out how to complete this magnificent structure.
Whoa.
So after 140 years, 2 years from this summer, they will finish the Christ the King Tower. So it's something I just daydream about. Aaron and I went 6 years ago, and
Wait,
it's
is it in
even
Spain?
more.
Yeah.
It's in Barcelona.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in Barcelona, and it's even more incredible, in real life than in pictures. I mean, it is
yeah.
absolutely transporting, I would say.
You should
That
do
is
like
crazy.
a CLT mini study abroad trip when they open it for the
Yes.
first time. I would totally sign all my children up and come myself. So
Yes.
CLT should do its first study abroad to go see in person the Sagrada
Love
Familia.
that. I love how quick y'all are too with the images. It's amazing.
Jessica,
You've got a
woo!
great producer. Shout out Jessica.
Yeah,
Thank you for
producer
helping out today.
rocks.
Okay, so mine is going to be less beautiful. Can we get the ducks?
I love the segue. Oh my gosh.
Oh, the music
What?
is so
Wait, what is
intense.
this?
Sorry. So Chicago's 2 favorite pastimes: 1, drinking; 2, dumping random substances into the Chicago River. I saw this on Twitter over the weekend. I guess they dumped, how many did they do? 75,000 rubber ducks in the Chicago River. It is a fundraising event where the ducks race down the Chicago River to raise money for the Special Olympics, which, nice cause. But look at like the ploof. The ploof of plastic at the end. I'm just like, this must be
I
the
thought
most
it was
abused
paint.
river of all
This was
time.
great. No kidding.
And so I'm going through and I'm like, why does Chicago love dumping stuff in the river? And I discovered Poopgate. Is anyone familiar with Poopgate?
Oh, wait, in Paris?
No, not Paris. I
In
feel like this
Chicago.
is a recurring theme on here. I've discovered places where poop ends up in a river. I don't know
Oh my
how.
gosh, no.
No, Poopgate. If anyone in the chat knows Poopgate, if they're a Dave Matthews Band fan, so apparently 2004, controversy rocked the music scene. The Dave Matthews Band bus incident, aka Poopgate, I discovered and I had to talk about because I thought it was so funny. I was just in here laughing before. They had to pay $200,000 to an EPA agency and other projects because the bus dumped like pounds of poop in the Chicago River. The Dave Matthews Band tour bus did this. And sorry, this is really gross, but I just cannot get over how crazy this is. And there's a whole conspiracy broke out over this. So they were doing this over the bridge, over the Kinsey Street Bridge. And then a passenger boat went under the bridge at 1 p.m. whilst this is happening. And they dumped poop on the passenger boat. And they said people started throwing up. People started getting sick.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. And Dave Matthews, I don't know if he's apologized for it at this point. They got fined big time. But I was like, so now we have Dave Matthews Band poop in the river. We have rubber ducks in the river. And we have they just dye the river green for St. Patrick's Day. And everyone just gets drunk. So
Oh my gosh.
I just cannot get over how crazy this whole. Sorry to bring that up.
I thought this was like the party of green agenda too. I mean, like, come on.
There was a great
Where's the
Babylon
love?
Bee on dyeing the Chicago River red before.
Oh,
I saw that
the
one too, and
DNC, yeah.
I thought of that for the DNC, and I was
Dyeing
like,
it red
"This
for
is the
blood.
city that probably I think they banned plastic straws in restaurants, and they're dumping rubber ducks in the river." Like, yeah. So, Twilight Zone. So that was
Oh
kind of
my
gross.
gosh.
I had it in the title, and I knew I had to deliver it. And this was after, of course, like an eloquent, beautiful image of this
Sagrada
Barcelona
Familia.
church, and I had to follow up with that. But that's a good
Good
summary
job,
of
Pogo.
the
That's what you're here
vibes I
for.
bring to the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Very on trend.
thank you guys for joining. Jeremy, thanks for taking the time today. This was a blast, man.
Oh,
We'll have to
Pogo,
have you back.
what a delight to join you both, Erika. Thank you.
Yeah, it was so much fun. We'll have to do it again.
Sweet. So help out the show. Leave a like on this episode. You can subscribe. And Jeremy, if people want to reach you, you got a great Twitter account. If you want to plug that or the CLT in general, where can they find more about you?
Sure. Yeah. CLTexam.com. Check us out there. I'm on X at Jeremy. Everybody just calls it Twitter still. I usually call it Twitter too. Twitter at Jeremy Tate 41. This has been a lot of fun.
Sweet. Yeah. I actually had someone at my church recognize me off of Twitter. That was the first
That's
time.
so weird. That
was a
that's
weird
crazy.
experience. Cool guy. Really cool guy, but strange, man. Twitter is an interesting world. And then, yeah, if you guys want to email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. If you want to support the show, become a champion, catholicvote.org/champions is where you can do that. Absolutely the only way we're able to do this is through the generosity of our supporters. So thank you so much to everyone who is a champion. But best thing you can do, pray for us, pray for Jeremy, pray for the CLT, St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday. Have a great day, and we'll see you guys then. Peace.